that light at the end of the tunnel, it is definitely there, but you cannot see it at all. I knew where I wanted to be. I knew where I wanted to go, but I didn't have what I needed to actually make it happen. I don't come from a racing family. I don't come from a wealthy family. I don't come from this. I don't come from that. I don't look this way, look that way. Toughness is just toughness in general. It's all mental. At the end of the day, you have to have a lot of mental toughness anytime you're going after any big goals, any big dreams, because throughout the journey, it's going to be dark. Setbacks are setups for phenomenal comebacks.
So why is it got to be so damn tough?
Welcome to the Toughness Podcast. I'm your host, Paddy Steinfort, and we have a special guest today who has excelled in not one, not two, but three different industries, areas of achievement. Have gone from being playing college football in Division I to being an officer or a lieutenant specifically in the Navy, and now competing in the National Series in NASCAR. Welcome to the show, Jesse Iwuji.
Thanks for having me on the show today.
Now, I mentioned three of the hills that you have climbed and are still climbing in some instances there. It's quite a varied journey, right? And I want to start off with something that I read in your background notes that was really interesting to me, and I think will be a good diving off point, is a quote that you love from Les Brown that talks about, I'm going to butcher the phrase here, you might be able to fix it for me, but that someone's perception of you doesn't have to be the actual reality. Is that what has allowed you the freedom to be like, you know what, I've done this great thing and now I'm going to go do this thing? Like, you've changed and evolved multiple times. Is that been an early part of your identity?
It was really, really huge. Actually, one of my friends sent me a video back in 2015. It was like just about kind of the beginning of this whole journey of me trying to rise up the ranks of NASCAR. And in this video, he knew, I don't know how, but at that particular time, he somehow got the sense that I was struggling to try to figure this thing out, how to figure out how to get funding, how to just get through the ladder, because I knew where I wanted to be. I knew where I wanted to go, but I didn't have what I needed to actually make it happen. So for some reason, he was sensing it that day. I don't know how, because I didn't see him that day. He just, he sensed it. So he got on Facebook and he sent me the video. And in the video, that's when I first heard the phrase. And it was, someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. And when I heard that, it just clicked. And I was like, you know what? It's because there's all these people out there who feel like there's no way in the world I'll be able to make it through this journey. There's no way I'll be able to eventually race, at the top levels of NASCAR. There's just no way it can happen because, I don't come from a racing family. I don't come from a wealthy family. I don't come from this. I don't come from that. I don't look this way, look that way. Like, all these people were saying all these things on why I couldn't, but I wasn't going to let their opinion of me, their opinion of my journey, become my reality. I knew I was going to get to where I wanted to go because I had already had the vision. I had already seen myself become what I needed to become. And because I already saw it, that means the deal is done. I just need to grind and stay strong enough, long enough to get to the end.
Super, super cool. And it reminds me a lot of time when I'm talking to people who are world level performers like yourself, they talk about that sort of a moment, which is a crystallization almost of what you already knew. Like you've obviously, you went through a childhood playing high school football in Texas, which is a big deal, right? Yeah. Not everyone who plays high school football in Texas goes on to play at a Division I school in college, and you achieve that. Not everyone who even applies to go to the Navy ends up being a lieutenant. And clearly not everyone who sets out to be in racing cars ends up driving in the National Series in NASCAR. And so is this something that you feel was inherent? Like it was taught to you by your parents, or you picked it up in childhood, or it was that moment that someone sent you that quote that it really locked in for you?
I think I had already known it. I think prior to that, I never had heard it being, verbalized in that way. And when I heard him say it, that's when it clicked. And I was like, okay, this is why I was able to go achieve this, achieve that. Because in any instance in my life where I've had to go try to achieve something that might have seemed like a lofty goal, I've been able to achieve it because I didn't let other people's opinions of me become my reality. When I was playing football in high school, yes, I eventually got recruited and played college football, but I wasn't like a high school football star from the day I came into high school. I wasn't good at football at all to begin with. Like, when I first started high school football, I was horrible. I mean, I had some speed, I could run, but that was about it. I couldn't catch a football to save my life. I didn't know a lot about football. I just wasn't good at football. So for me to go from not being great at all in ninth grade to by my senior year of high school, finally being good, starting on the team and eventually getting recruited, it took me getting past all the negativity in those first few years. All the people who told me that I sucked at football, all the people who told me I would never amount to anything in football, I had to get past that. But once again, I was never letting anyone's opinion of me become my reality.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Like a lot of people talk about along the journey, the people who tell you suck at something that you end up being really good at. But early on, they might catch a quick snapshot of it, or maybe even yourself. You might say that to yourself sometimes, right? Is that one of the questions that we ask a lot on this show is for the guest's definition of toughness. And the cool thing is you might have 3 or 4 different ones because of all these different domains you've been in. Football, which is considered a fairly tough environment. Navy, which is considered a ridiculously tough environment. NASCAR, which is tough as well. Like, do you look at toughness as like it's the same across all those things, or does toughness mean a different thing in each of those areas?
Yeah, for me, it definitely is the same. Toughness is just toughness in general. It's all mental. At the end of the day, you have to have a lot of mental toughness anytime you're going after any big goals, any big dreams, because throughout the journey, it's going to be dark. And that's what some people don't understand. They think, I'm going to set this huge goal. I'm going to go after whatever it is. I'm going to achieve this. I'm going to start this. I'm going to do that, become whatever. And maybe they've never gone through a journey to try to achieve something big. But then they immediately start going through this tunnel, the tunnel of life to try to get there. And it's dark, and it's very, very dark. It is actually pitch black the entire way. That light at the end of the tunnel, it is definitely there, but you cannot see it at all. Some people expect, okay, I know I'm going to go into this tunnel and it's going to be dark and it's going to be tough, but light's going to be there. Like, I'm still going to see it at the very end. You're not going to see it. And what happens is people aren't mentally tough enough to get through that darkness throughout that time. Their darkness, who knows how long it's going to be. It could last a day. It could last a week. It could last a year, 5 years, 10 years. You never know. But you have to continue to push forward. You have to have the mental toughness to understand that, like, I have to have faith throughout this time. Like, as dark as it is, I got to keep going, because eventually light will show up, and it might not show up to the final inch of this tunnel, but you have to have faith and be mentally tough to get through that entire time.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned there the having faith, or particularly you said something a bit earlier of, I'd already seen the vision, so I know it's going to happen. I just got to get down and do the work. Right. And it sounds like you saw the light before you got in the tunnel, and you get in the tunnel and everything goes black, and you just got to hang on till that light comes back. Right. Is that what you're talking about?
That is the faith part of it. Yes. And that's exactly it right there. Because initially, like, the reason why any of us go after anything in life is because we envisioned it. We envisioned ourselves becoming a race car driver, becoming a business owner, becoming whatever it is. We already saw it. That's why we saw. We don't just blindly just go start doing something and all of a sudden things happen. Sometimes that happens, but usually it's because we saw something like, oh, I saw myself inventing the first airplane, so I'm going to start, working on it. That's where it starts. But the thing is, all of a sudden we get into that tunnel, and even though we had already saw it, we forget that we saw it, and it's super dark, and then people quit. And it's like, why would you quit? You already saw that it's done. Like, it is there. It's just believe that you will get to the end. Just believe it's still going to be there. And that's the tough part of the journey. But that's why only a few, succeed at what they do.
Yeah. I mean, for you, that's a particularly vivid example. If you look at the lineup before any race in NASCAR, there are not many black guys in that lineup, right? There's only 2, as I understand it, 2 African Americans.
2 in the entire national series. 2 are entire. So in my NASCAR Truck Series and Xfinity Series that I race in, really it's only me. And then in the Cup Series at the top level, it's Bubba Wallace.
Right. And so it's even more challenging to how do you look at that as a sport in the first place? And there's no representation for you because Bubba hadn't made it, I think, for the first time you were looking at racing cars, right? And so how do you look at that and think, yeah, that's something I'm going to do? Like that's kind of like a weird out there dream. How did that come to be for you?
When I first looked at it, I knew that it was, I think at that time when I first started getting into racing, it was only Bubba Wallace. at least at the national level. And then there was a couple other African American drivers who were racing like late model series and NASCAR K&N series at that time. But then they just nothing ever went, like it never went anywhere after that. Like they never made it to like the NASCAR Truck Series and Xfinity Series. So for me, I figured, you know what, I'm gonna keep on going forward no matter what. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely different being like one of two, but you know, it's part of it. It's just how it is. I think in racing in general, just it's tough because a lot of it isn't just completely on like how good of a race car driver you is. A lot of it is funding. You got to make sure you find the right funding to get in a race car because it costs money. Tires, fuel, people, transporting, travel, all that stuff costs money. So what ends up happening is a lot of people can't find it, and all of a sudden that's where their journey ends. And for me, I just refuse to not stop looking.
Nice. So that then gives us an interesting metaphor almost, is that the situation you find yourself in as only one of two African-American drivers, it's obviously a different situation. And being a black man in a sport that isn't very diverse, people could look at it as one of two ways, or it could be both. Mm-hmm. Does that come with extra weight in your car as you're trying to get to where you're trying to go? Or is it extra fuel? Or is it both?
Yeah, it can sometimes be some extra weight. Sometimes it can be extra fuel. I try not to let it be part of my thought process at all. I try to just do my thing. And because once again, I know where I'm going. I know what I'm going to achieve. I just got to get there. The tough part is I don't know what's in between. So I don't know all the challenges in between, whether things are going to go well or not go well, or go well some days and not. It just, there's so much that happens. So and that's the tough part throughout the whole journey. When I think I'm going to have a good day, I don't. When I think I'm going to have a bad day, I have a great day. Like it's, you know, a lot of different things happen every single day, even off the track, on the track. So for me, I try not to let just the race side of it carry any more burden, because there's enough burden on everything else that I try not to add more fuel to that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, you mentioned there you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes you think you're going to have a great day and you have a shit one, and you think you're going to have a shit day and you have a great day. And let's talk about that. There's a lot of challenges, obviously, in racing, as you mentioned, without anything involved in race, just purely getting in the car and getting it going and competing and winning. What would you say when you've had those days where you thought you were going to be good, but you weren't? What were the things you learned out of those days? Or is there an example for you that stands out where it's like, this is the hardest thing I've had to deal with so far?
Yeah. For me, on those days, you know, the learning I take from it is, hey, like what I try to look at is, okay, what did go right that day? And what went wrong? And then from there, when you can take what went wrong, you got to try to, you know, construct from there and figure out, okay, what can I do to fix that? What can I do to get better? What can I do to prepare a little bit better so that doesn't happen? Because throughout this journey, there's going to be things that, you know, I've just never seen before, things that will happen to me that I've never experienced. And the best thing to do is just to learn from that stuff so that it doesn't happen again. Because it's a new journey. This isn't something I've been doing, you know, for 20, 30 years of my life. So there's just going to be a lot of new things. And as you continue to rise the ranks of NASCAR, I'm going to be experiencing new places, new tracks, new ways to drive. Like there's so many different things happening that it's just a constant evolving journey. So through the evolving, I have to evolve too. And by me evolving, sometimes I just have to make mistakes. Sometimes things just won't go the way I want. But that's because, you know, it's new, it's fresh, and I'm learning. But then the next time I come around, hopefully it's better. And maybe next time I come around, maybe it's not. But you can still learn from it and continue to push forward. But that's part of the whole thing. Like I always tell people, when you're going through a journey, you know, life rewards those who stay strong enough, long enough.
Like that. Life rewards those who stay strong enough, long enough. I'm going to probably steal that. Yeah, I will definitely quote you on it, though. A lot of research. I'm not sure if you've heard of, I think Malcolm Gladwell popularized it, but the guy behind it was the guy called Anders Ericsson, talking about deliberate practice and the idea of 10,000 hours.
10,000, yeah.
To become a master at something. So in like 2015 till now, I'm assuming that you haven't reached 10,000 hours yet?
No, I don't think definitely not 10,000 hours on track, that's for sure. But yeah, I think between my racing simulator and on track time, it's tough, but definitely not 10,000 hours. It takes 10,000 hours. You're looking at 10 to 15 years worth of a lot of practice.
Yeah. And so that's exciting and daunting at the same time, right? But one of the things that he says in his research that people pick up by doing this practice is learning how to deal with when people don't have their A game, right? And you always use the Michael Jordan flu game as the best example, the very vivid example of someone turns up, they feel like shit, and they still manage to go out and perform well. You kind of alluded to it a second ago, where some days you feel like you're going to go well and you don't. And sometimes it's the other. You feel terrible, you're like not in it, and then you just find a way to make it happen, right? Have you had experiences like that where you've actually recognized, maybe not the first time because you don't know you're in the dark tunnel with the U-turn coming up, but the second time you're like, oh, I've seen this before and I got through this by, I'm just going to shrink. I call it shrinking your thinking. I'm just going to focus on doing these one or two things. Like there's a lot of pressure. Your life is literally on the line while you're doing a lot of this stuff. So how do you shrink your focus to like just these 2 or 3 things that you can manage when things aren't going that well? What is it that you focus on?
So for me, what I do is I remember that setbacks are setups for phenomenal comebacks. So with that being said, what I do is when setbacks are happening, I start like, at first naturally as a human being, you get upset. You're like, oh my God, what's going on? How am I going to get through this? But then I remember, okay, these setbacks are setups for comebacks, like phenomenal comebacks. So even though these setbacks are happening right now, the phenomenal comeback is coming up soon. Something really good is coming up soon. So now that whole part of staying strong enough, long enough comes into effect. Okay, get through it. Because a lot of times when people start going through these setbacks, they don't think about the comeback that's about to happen on the back end of it. And all of a sudden they quit in the middle of it. So they never even got there. And then at the end of it, when they tell people the story of why they quit, they're like, oh yeah, this happened. I lost all this. I lost that. I lost whatever. And that's when I had to call it quits. Not realizing that even though they were losing this and losing that and losing the battle, it didn't mean that the war was lost. It just mean the battles were just not going their way. But the win, like the end of the war was coming. It's just you had to stay strong enough, long enough to get to the end. You cannot quit in the middle of the process. It'd be like, turning off your washing machine right when it hits a moment where it's pausing for a bit during a wash. All of a sudden your stuff is still wet. Like, why'd you quit? Like, just let it go through the whole process. It's going to get to the end.
That's a great analogy. Very simple analogy, but it's one all of us have done, I'm sure, have pulled out the washing too early.
Yeah. Or the dryer too. Actually, the dryer is even more because
the worst.
Yeah, they're like, oh, because you think it's a bun done. You're like, oh yeah, no, it's all hot in there. It's all good, and then but it's not. Like, just let it go through the process.
And then you pull it out, and it's like kind of a bit damp. You're like, oh, is that enough? Do I do it? Yeah.
Then you hate yourself the rest of life because you're like, oh my God, this sounds like crap. It feels like crap. Why didn't I just wait? Why did I just wait?
10 minutes. All it was going to be was 10 minutes.
10 minutes. And at least on a dryer, you can see the timer. On this life journey, you can't see that timer. So that's the faith part. You have faith that the timer you're going to get there. Just stay with it. And people ask, how long are you supposed to stay with it? How many, and I'm like, as long as necessary. Okay. How many reps do I got to do? As many as necessary. Okay. How much money do I need to find? As much as you can. Like, there's no number. You just keep going. Like, that's the thing. Like, there is no finite number. Just keep going.
Yeah. I had a mentor when I was a professional athlete many years ago. I had a mentor who I was talking to him like, what should my stats be? What's going to make sure that I get it? And he's like, you leave it beyond doubt. You don't get the number. You double the number. Like, just leave them with no doubt, no excuses, no room for error. And that I'll circle back to that funding thing that I think you hinted at there a second ago. I'm interested though, you mentioned the setbacks, the setups for phenomenal comebacks. What's the biggest setback you've had so far? There may be more in the future, but so far, where has that actually come true for you? Let's turn it into a comeback.
Yeah. So, some of my biggest setbacks, on the funding side, I've definitely had setbacks there. And I would say on that side of it, there's been times throughout this journey, a couple times where, I completely ran out of funding, completely ran out of money, didn't have anything else left to go, had no clue of how I was going to get through the rest of the season, through the rest of the year, or even go into the following year. Like, I had no clue because I literally had nothing. I was like in the hole, sometimes thousands of dollars in the hole. But once again, I didn't quit because a lot of these times I was in such bad shape that most people, majority, 99% of people would have quit. And I didn't. I decided, you know what? Like, once again, this is a setback. Like, the comeback is coming. I stayed with it, but because I had always been, grinding hard, networking right, working hard, like all that energy I was putting into this whole thing, eventually was going to give back. So, outside of racing, I started some businesses. One of my businesses is where I host drag racing events. And these events, invite people to the track, spectators come, people come race their cars, and I'm able to make money off of all the ticket sales. Well, I had an upcoming event at one point right after one of these huge setbacks where I ran out of racing money. I had nothing. I had one of these events coming up, and it actually made enough money to cover what I need to cover to get through the rest of the year. And it's, once again, it's because I stayed strong and I could have quit. I could have quit on the racing and been like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I don't have anything else. But I didn't. I stayed with it. And eventually that comeback came, like literally right when I needed it, which was right when I had nothing else left. It came, but I didn't quit. I let the whole thing play through and we got through it.
That's a great, awesome, real. I'm sure there are many people listening who have been in a similar situation where it's like, I just got to hang on one more day, right? One more event. You've used a bit of language there that I want to touch on that references, I think, a mindset that I assume you develop in training at the Naval Academy, where you said you may not win the battle, but you can still win the war, being able to continue your campaign. So a lot of language there around what is military and war language. How much of your training, your time in the Navy carries over to the way you approach, maybe not just NASCAR, but your life now? Like, how much did that inform your approach once you even left the Navy, or you're still in the reserves? But once you stopped, you went on tour, you actually served in active duty. Once that was finished, how much does that play into how you go about things now?
Yeah, a lot of it still plays into effect right now. Now I'm in the Navy Reserves. I was active duty for about 7 years, went on 2 different deployments. But one of the first things we learned at the Navy or at the Naval Academy when I first got to school there was that there's this little small book, and I can't remember how many pages it is, very, very small, but it's called Message to Garcia. And the whole thing about that book is it talks about, there was a fellow, and I can't remember, he's Army, Marine Corps, I can't remember, but there's a fellow who needed to deliver a message to someone else in the middle of war or battle or something. And whoever had given this message basically gave him this message, was like, hey, this message needs to get to Garcia. And then the person who needed to deliver it, like at that point was like, okay, who is Garcia? Where is Garcia? How do I get this to them? And basically the person who had given them the message was like, figure it out. And that was it. This person had to get this very important message to someone else and had no directions on where to go, what to do, who it was, but he had to figure it out. And that's what the book was about, was just being resourceful. Like, you're not going to be given all the answers. You're not going to be given everything you need. You just got to be resourceful and figure it out. And we learned that very, very early at the Naval Academy. And that's what kind of helped me get through the beginning parts of my journey of trying to build my own business, trying to race in NASCAR, was I had to just figure it out. Like life, the world isn't going to give you all the answers. Some people are going to help you. Some people are going to be there. Some people will help support, but don't expect all the answers. Expect that nothing is going to be there for you. No one's going to be there for you. Expect that you're not going to have it all. But as long as you can stay resourceful, you can go find the answers. You can start learning how to ask the right questions. You can learn how to build relationships. You will get the information you need. You will get the resources you need, but you just gotta, you gotta be resourceful. And that's what that book's about. I learned so much from it. And now, I'm using that resourcefulness throughout everything I do, because I know once you're going through this whole journey, you're going to have a lot of battles. Some battles you'll win, some battles you'll lose. But at the end of the day, you'll win a war as long as you have the right vision, and stay resourceful, you grind, and stay strong enough, long enough.
I want to highlight 3 things you said there, though, that actually touched on a question I was going to ask around what is being resourceful, because a lot of people will write to me or will talk to other people that I interview and say, hey, I want to do what you do. How did you get there? How do I get to where you are? And I'm like, yo, you don't want to travel the journey that I've traveled. It's not a normal journey. It had many U-turns and I fell off a cliff once, and like, you don't want to do that. And also, you're not me, and you're not coming from where I came from, and it's going to be different for everyone. So often the feedback is be resourceful. But I love the way you, in the midst of that, you said 3 things that were, if you're saying be resourceful, here's what it means. It means find the answers, like at least go looking for and know what you're looking for. Number 2, ask the right questions. And number 3, and I'll probably butcher the order here, but build relationships. Mm-hmm. And that might be one of the most important ones, because that'll help you do the other 2, right?
Yeah.
Who for you is, like, when you look back at your journey to where you are currently, at least, do you look at and point to as maybe not even a hero, but maybe just a wingman or someone who was a signpost along the journey where you're like, that person was really crucial for me? Or even if you don't want to name a person, just describing the relationship that developed.
Yeah, it's quite a few. It's not just one. Even just my agent right now, Matt Casto. He's been super, very, very important part of this whole journey. Very resourceful person, very well connected, a lot of great relationships. He knows a lot, and together we're able to bounce different ideas off each other, and we're always in sync on what we do. Like I always know that when he's out there speaking for me and doing different things, that he represents me in the right way, but he's also able to use his connections to continue to kind of push this journey forward. Even people just before him, I have some friends who have always just kind of been people that I can always bounce ideas off of, or even listen to them about their journey so that I can learn different things from it. One of my friends, Ryan Hogan, he owns a business now that's grown so much. He started it back in 2016. It's now grown to where it has revenue of over $50 million. And he's been doing well with that. But we just jump on a phone call with each other randomly and just talk. I tell him about what's going on in my life. He tells me about what's going on in his life, what's happening with the business, where they're going, different things they're doing. And even though his stuff has nothing to do with what I'm doing, I can still learn from it, and I can ask the right questions. So I can take little tidbits of just strategies he does and apply it to things I'm doing right now to help it. But it's just building those relationships where you have people who are like-minded, who are trying to succeed in life, who are trying to elevate their life. When you surround yourself with those good people, and the group around you is always trying to elevate, like you're going to elevate too. You can't surround yourself with people who are like going down the elevator. No, you got to be with people that are trying to go up. They don't want to stay at the same level. They're trying to go up, because that like-minded type group, you're all going to rise together. And it just makes it very helpful and helps the likelihood that your journey is going to be successful. It increases that a lot.
For sure. I was just talking with a fellow performance coach the other day, talking about different ventures that we've got going on. And I think this is the best way to summarize that, is that all boats rise with the tide.
Yep.
If one of us is sitting here and you see them go up, that's awesome, because we're all going to go up with it if we're all in the same pool. So really cool. That's a motto I share there. And with that in mind, what do you hope for the future? When you look at either your future in racing or even just the work that you do outside of racing as well, what are you hoping to achieve with your career and also with all the other stuff that you do outside of that?
Yeah. So for me, the ultimate goal on the racing side of things is to make it to the NASCAR Cup Series and race full time in the NASCAR Cup Series, eventually compete for wins and eventually a championship. That's the goal. As far as the business stuff, continue to grow the businesses that I have right now. I'm doing the drag racing events. I have esports business now. We're putting on sim racing events. I have real estate investing where I'm, investing in different properties. And also when I have a trucking company right now where we have semi trucks on the road hauling mainly Amazon goods. And I'm trying to grow all that stuff. And who knows, maybe other business ventures jump into my plate of business stuff over the future, but I'm trying to grow all that stuff. With the racing side and the business side, when I elevate it to the level that I want it to be, it'll just make everything else in life better.
Yeah. I should put business mogul as your fourth.
Entrepreneur.
College football, Navy, NASCAR, and entrepreneur. All right.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I add that on. This is absolutely not really that relevant, or maybe it is to the topic of the show, but pure curiosity. You mentioned the sim racing thing. I saw that you won an event, I think it was, or it was an electronic racing event.
Yeah. NASCAR did a fan vote to vote one more person into the NASCAR Cup Series. Their pro invitational sim racing event, and the fans voted me in, which was awesome. So I got to compete in the event. I ran well, ended up finishing mid-pack, but I was happy because, it's like I'm racing against NASCAR Cup Series guys, the best of the best. So to finish right in the middle of the field, I was happy. I ran second place for a good portion of the race. It was fun. I had a really good time and loved every bit about it.
So my question on that is, how different is the experience for you when you're in a sim versus when you're in the thing that's actually going around that could crash into a wall and cause damage? Like different physiological and mental experience. Tell us what's the same and what's different.
Yeah, you definitely don't take as many risks in the real world as you do on the sim. But it's good to get to a point where you can be as risky in the real world as you are on the sim. It's good to get to that point. It's just tough. There's no reset button in real life, and damage costs money in real life. Unlike on the sim, I can hit the reset button. So yeah, that's the only tough part.
Yeah. Is there a particular point that you can look back in your journey that you look at as your highlight so far? So something that you're looking at, you look back at, because we had someone on the show who was totally not from sport or the military. They were in trading, but they talked about this really important element of most of our emotion and therefore our decisions are based on this thing called anticipatory affect, which basically means that feeling that I think I'm going to feel if I do this thing, right? And so she would argue that you continuing to put yourself in situations where there's no reset button and you could cost a lot of money and physical damage, you're still, even though that risk and that fear is there, you're actually chasing like this thing at the end of it is going to give me that feeling again. That feeling that I had when either I got on the podium first time or the first time I got in a car. Like, what is it for you that drives you, that actually goes over and above any of the risks that are involved because you just want that feeling again?
Yeah, for me, the feeling is accomplishing that end dream. And that end dream was my vision initially that I had, which was I saw myself, the two visions. The first one was walking out to driver introductions with thousands of fans, getting ready to run a NASCAR Cup Series race. And that was the first vision. The other vision was winning a race and staying on top of the car and saluting the entire crowd. And this dream so happens to be at Daytona. So for some reason, that's where it's going to happen. That's Daytona. I'll stand on top of the car and salute the whole crowd. And I see myself winning this race, one of the biggest races out there. And that's kind of where it's at. Like, that's where I see it. So that's what pushes me to continue to jump in, life-threatening situations, racing 200 miles per hour against people. I continue to do all the stuff we're doing, sometimes not even having all the resources to do it, but still just try to make it happen. Continue to do it, putting myself out there. We live in an internet age where there's a lot of keyboard warriors and trolls. So when you don't do well, there's always someone out there who has something to say about it, and usually a group of them. And you have to get past that. You have to remember those people are just probably living in their mother's basement, and probably have no life.
That's a good way to reframe it. Yeah, and that dream's got to come true, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Part of a journey. Jesse, we really appreciate your time. One of the things that we want to make sure this show does is translate your experience and your insight, your wisdom, your motivation to help, even if it helps one person who's listening. What would you say is the element of either your time in the Navy or your time in NASCAR that you look at and you're like, if I finish NASCAR tomorrow, let's say someone funded me, I got to go and win Daytona and all of my dreams were achieved and I could walk away. So I'm done. I know I would still apply this learning to my everyday life, whether it be as a business tycoon that it sounds like you're going to be, or whether it be as a parent or a partner or whatever it might be. What is the element of your life and your experience and your journey so far? You're like, I think this is something that applies to just life in general.
I think the biggest thing is, like we talked about before, going through the journey, it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough. For those going through whatever journey, understand when it gets dark, even in the darkest point of the night, the sun will still rise. So life's a cycle. Remember that life is a cycle. In the darkest point of the night, the sun will still rise. So just keep on pushing. That's the biggest thing that I apply to everything I do in life, because when you understand that and you believe in that and you have faith in that, then that's when you will get through anything. Like, nothing's going to be able to stop you, because no matter how many punches you take, no matter how many times you get kicked down, no matter how many times you lose, no matter how many times you get embarrassed, no matter how many times you just look dumb doing whatever you're doing, you're going to get past it, and eventually you're going to win, because you understand that even as dark as it gets, as dark as the night's going to get, the sun will still rise. And once you know that, you're unstoppable.
That's awesome, man. Sounds like you are unstoppable. This is a cool moment to catch you in your journey, because I'm sure it is going to be ongoing. I look forward to replaying that clip where you said, I'm going to win that race at Daytona. When that happens in the future, I'll pull that clip out. Be sure to share it back to you. Jesse, thank you very much for your time. If people want to track you down, either for your drag racing stuff or any of the other business ventures you've got, or just to follow you because I love your story, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, the best place is on all different social media platforms. I'm mainly on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But people can just type in my name on there, Jesse Iwuji. That's Jesse. Last name is Iwuji. And if you can't remember how to spell it, go on Google, type in Navy NASCAR driver.
There you go. Or at the very least, should be at the top of those listings. There might be some imposters. There's only one Jesse Iwuji. Well, thanks again for your time, man. Look forward to following the rest of your journey and keep on trucking.
Yeah, most definitely. Will do. Thank you.